Hello everyone, welcome to the next video that is on the topic machine learning approaches. So in this lecture video, we'll study what are the various machine learning approaches that are used in machine learning. So we have already discussed some of them, but here we'll discuss in detail. So some of the machine learning approaches are artificial neural network, support vector machines, reinforcement learning, and many more. So in this, we'll start with the first one, that is artificial neural networks. Now, what are artificial neural networks? So as the name itself specifies, it is inspired by the neural networks, or it is inspired by the biological neural network. These algorithms are based on the brain function and are used to model complicated patterns and forecast issues. So this artificial neural network is basically inspired by the working of the human brain. So it is mostly used for the complicated patterns. The data is given in the form of networks, that is, the data is propagated from the input layer to the output layer. There are various interconnections between the neurons so that the data can be processed. Now, the major application of artificial neural network is in deep learning. So these are basically the complicated networks, and the neural network is used for solving the deep learning problems. In the third point, we can see the development of artificial neural network was a result of an attempt to replicate the working of human brain. So it is similar to the biological neural network, or we can say the structure is also inspired from the biological neural networks. So next we'll see the difference of, first we'll study the structure of the neural network, how it is actually working, or what are the various layers which are used in the neural networks. So we can see the neural network basically consists of interconnected nodes, neurons, which are organized into layers. Now the information basically flows in between these nodes. Now, how these nodes are connected? These nodes are connected by the connections which have weights. So every node is assigned some weight that is used for processing the information from one layer to the another. Second, we can see it enables to recognize patterns, make predictions, and solve the various tasks in ML and AI. Now, what are the three layers? As I told you in the previous slide also, the machine learning or the neural networks are organized in the form of layers. So there are basically three layers. First, we can say is the input layer. Next is the hidden layer, which can be one or more than one, and the output layer. So the perceptrons or the neural networks are sometimes called as multi-layer perceptrons because if we increase the number of layers, if we have more than one layer, then it is a multi-layer perceptron. So that is why it is known as multi-layer. Let us say we have a neuron or we have some nodes. There are some nodes, and on the basis of which the information is passed. So let us study that in the previous slide. So here we can see this is a biological neuron in which we have the dendrite. This is basically the information flowing. Next, the cell nucleus. This is the center of the body or the cell body. Next, we have the axon. This is the weight which is connecting the different neurons. And last, we have the synapse. Now, this is a biological neuron. And you can see at the last, the neuron or the artificial neural network is designed. So here we have the inputs. We have different input 1, input 2, and input 3. Now these are the values, like these are the nodes which have some value. It is basically numeric value, x1, x2, xn. Now these are connected through weights, and this is a neuron which is processing the value. So y is equal to, or we can say the will be equal to W1 X1 plus W2 X2, so on. So this is how the values of y are calculated. On the basis of this, we can see which neuron has to be activated, which we'll study in the further topic, that is in the unit 2, the artificial neural network. There we'll study the mathematical terms which are related to the neuron. Next, we can categorize the neural networks into the following 3 categories. You can see the first one is the feed-forward neural network. Second is the convolutional neural network. And third is the recurrent neural network. Now, the feed-forward networks are multi-layer perceptrons because the simple neural networks, as I have already told you, contains input layer, hidden layer, and an output layer. But when we are talking about multi-layer perceptrons or feed-forward neural networks, there can be multiple input or multiple hidden layers, not input layers, hidden layers. So data is actually fed into these models to train them, and these are used for computer vision, natural language processing, and other neural networks. So this is the first one, that is the feed-forward network. Second, we have the convolution neural network. Now, what are convolution neural network? These are also feed-forward networks, but these are basically used only for image classification, image recognition, pattern recognition, or computer vision. So in CNN, the data is mostly of image type. So here the patterns are made on the basis of images, and then the different operations are applied on it, and then the final output is being reflected. So this is the second one, convolution neural network. So before going on to the next one, let us just look into this feed forward networks. Now, why these networks are called feed forward? Because the input is being processed to the output layer or the hidden layer, and then it is moved to the output layer. So it is moving in a forward direction. So that is why these networks are known as feed forward networks. Next, the recurrent neural network. Now, where these networks are used. So in this, the data is a sequential data or a time series data. So whenever we are talking about the applications like language translation, natural language processing, speech recognition, so the data is basically changing at a particular moment. The next moment the data will be some other thing. Like whenever we are talking or whenever we are seeing some speech graphs, so we can see the modulations. So the recurrent neural networks are basically used for the sequential data or time series data. So this is the neural network, how these basically work, what are the different types of neural network. So this is the first approach. We'll study the second one. Second is the clustering. Now, what is clustering? As the name itself says, it is the process of arranging a group of objects in such a manner that the objects in the same group are similar to each other than the objects in the other group. So if we talk about clustering, the data which is unlabeled, we have different type of data, but whenever we are organizing that data, the data is being organized on the basis of similarity. And these groups of data which we are making are known as clusters. So you can see I've written over here, these are known as clusters. So on the basis of similarity, these groups are assigned. Now, data professionals often use clustering in exploratory data analysis, in which we basically analyze the data, we check the different patterns, we discover information from the data. So, as we have already discussed, clustering is an unsupervised data machine learning technique. So, it does not require a label set. So, the data is unlabeled. There are no labels assigned to a data set or the features associated with the data. Next, there is a diagram which will help you to understand what clustering is. We have some raw data which is in the form of fruits, apple, strawberry, and pear. Now you can see after the algorithm is applied, the clustering is applied, the fruits are assigned different groups. Now these groups are on the basis of similarity. All the apples are in one cluster. Next we have the pears and then we have the strawberry. So we can say this is C1, this is C2, and this is C3. So this is how the algorithm works. It basically works on the patterns from the raw data which is available to the model. So this is all for clustering. Next, we have the third approach, that is reinforcement learning. So reinforcement learning is a machine learning technique that enables an agent to learn in an interactive environment by trial and error using feedback from its own actions and experience. So it is a learning technique in which there is an environment on which the agent is acting. So whenever the agent is working on the environment, there can be some errors, there can be some positive things also. So the feedback is taken on the basis of which the model is updated or the errors are removed. Now you can see the both I have written over here, both supervised and reinforcement learning use mapping between the input and output. Unlike the supervised learning, where the feedback provided to the agent is correct set of actions for performing a task, and reinforcement learning uses rewards and punishment. So in the supervised learning, there is no concept of feedback. But in this reinforcement learning, we have the feedback. If the output is correct, we'll assign a reward for it. But if there is some fault or there is some negative action, we will assign some punishment for it. So the goals of both the reinforcement and supervised, unsupervised learning are different. Next, we have the diagram which will help you to understand the difference between supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement. So supervised is task driven because we know what value we have to predict or what are the target classes. But in unsupervised learning, there is no target class. The data is driven on the basis of clusters. The patterns are recognized on the basis of similarity. But in reinforcement learning, the agent learns from the mistake so that it can be improved for the next or the further set of moves. Now, these are some of the points on the basis of which we can formulate a learning problem. So we can see there is a diagram which is denoting the some major points like what is an agent, what is an environment, and how they are interacting. So the agent is interacting with the environment on the basis of actions. So there are some set of actions on the basis of which this agent can interact to this environment. Next, there is some reward which is on the basis of environment or what the action is being taken. So whenever it is positive, the agent is rewarded something, and otherwise the agent is punished. So S is the state which is helping us to move from the one state to another state. So here I have mentioned it. First is environment in which the agent is operating. Second, the state What is the current state? Reward, which is the feedback from the environment. A policy. Now, what is a policy? Which is helping us to map this action to a particular state. So whenever we are mapping the values, we need to assign some policy. And last is the value. So value is like what is the future reward an agent would receive by taking an action in a particular state. So this is how you can define our reinforcement learning problem. So I hope this is clear to everyone. So remaining approaches we'll study in the further video. Thank you.